there's no judgment at all there. It's just this anger that people don't know the truth. And you can't be angry at people because they don't know the truth. It's just a matter of letting them know the truth and sharing it from a place of, I'm not angry at you for being pro-choice, but you just need to hear my story. And it's not so that you'll feel sorry for me, because I don't feel sorry for myself. I'm just going through grief and healing, and it could take however long it takes. It took me a really long time to look back and recognise that I had a lot of really strong self-harming behaviour going on. I was desperately seeking to try and get pregnant again to replace that first child that I lost, and I would be in these really unhealthy relationships. I would try and get pregnant again. I would fall pregnant again, thinking that that would be the answer to my problems, and then I would find myself back in a clinic having another abortion, and that went on and on for many years, and I couldn't work out why I was doing that, why I had this pattern, this cycle going on. It was like, what is going on with me? And in the depths of my soul, the last thing I wanted to do was to have an abortion. If you had have asked me, would you ever do that again, I would have said no, absolutely not. But I found myself back doing the same thing again. It was just this insanity, and it took me a long time to realise, to sort of wake up to myself and to work out that that's what was going on. I was harming myself because I was carrying this shame and self-hatred and regret and remorse and anger and bitterness and all these horrible negative emotions which I suppressed with a whole stack of other things, alcohol, drugs and more men and changing jobs and living this facade of everything's actually really okay, but I was in this deep turmoil of trying to just replace this, baby, and nothing could replace it. Yeah. Well, I had no idea it was illegal. It was so accessible for me. It was just a phone call. When can you come in? When was your last period? Transaction, money. I think it's really just get you in as quickly as possible to get the ball rolling sort of thing, because you're obviously suffering and you're not in a great situation at the moment. Let's just get you in for some counselling, which isn't really counselling. Counselling to me is quite objective, if that's the right word. It's supportive and sort of putting it on the table for you to be able to make a decision. Whereas I found that when I went in, it was quite leading questions. So you're obviously very upset at the moment. How can we help you? If you weren't pregnant anymore, would that relieve you of the situation that you're in at the moment? Absolutely. Great. Well, it's very easy. All we do is it's very gentle, and they sort of talk about it. You won't feel a thing, and then you'll be able to go on and move on with your life. And is your boyfriend really struggling? It must be a bit tense for you at the moment in that relationship. But I also found that they really just did not care less about me as a person. I couldn't have cared less about me. That's not to judge them, they were just doing their job, but really, I'm not sure how many girls go through every day, but certainly there was no real concern for my welfare. Certainly after when you're going in for your second and third and fourth abortion, I would imagine in hindsight looking back, a worker would be like, wow, gee, you've been in a few times, what's actually going on for you? Why do you find yourself in this situation again? Not to judge me from a point of why aren't you taking precautions or this, that and the other, but what's going on for you emotionally at the moment? Like, why are you on this treadmill of being in unhealthy relationships and things like that? But really they just want to book you in, get you out the door, and that's how it appeared to me in hindsight looking back, was there was really no support in providing options or actually getting to the depth of what was going on for me in that time. And I just think women need support in that. I would absolutely have made different choices if I had have been supported in my pregnancies. All I faced was opposition. There was not one person in all of the pregnancies that I faced, not one person that said, you can do this, or let's just talk about it. Not one, people just saying there's absolutely no, you can't have this baby. So immediately just planting a seed of doubt and why can't I, and making me feel incapable. And I've had to fight a lot of anger about that because they weren't walking in my shoes. It's all very well for someone else to recommend an abortion, but then they give you their very strong opinion of why you should have one, and then they're left to go on with their life, and you are faced with dealing with that emotional trauma for the rest of your life. It took me a very long time to get to a place of recognising that's what was going on for me. I didn't justify and accept it as a real point of grief because no one told me that it was possible to have that. So therefore, what's wrong with me? Why am I losing my mind and doing things I swore I would never do. I just found myself living a life that was not the person that I was. I was forever changed. I just became obsessed with this trauma and this loss, this unbearable loss. And I used to hear other people sort of talk about it, but I still didn't relate to what they were saying because I'm not suffering that grief. I'm fine with the abortions that I've had. I know for most of my in fact all of my 20s and then into my 30s, if you had have asked me had abortion affected me, I would have said, no, not in the slightest. There's nothing wrong with me, I'm fine. I'm fine. In fact, yeah, do it. You just have a needle, you go to sleep, you pay your money, it's all done, and that's it. Life's great, just move on with it. I didn't know that that's why I was becoming more involved in alcohol and drugs and promiscuity and trying to feel this pain, what is going on with me, and I just really had no idea. And then, slowly these little thoughts would come, and isn't it funny, over the years I was seeing psychiatrists and psychologists and no one ever said, have you had an abortion? Not one in all the years. And I didn't, like I said, I didn't know that's what was going on for me. So I didn't say, look, do you think this could be linked to that? It was just never spoken about. Part of my journey was that void that you can never replace. You can never replace that child, even though at the clinic they never said to me, it's a baby, it's just a clump of cells and there's no life there, and they just do this and that, and they go through the procedure very briefly, but not for a moment is it life, not for a moment. So now that I have recognised that's what a lot of the root of my stuff is, this anger, but it's a righteous anger, not at anyone. I'm not angry at any boyfriend for pressuring me, and I can tell you some stories about that. Really abusive phone calls. If you don't have this abortion, I'm going to grab you and drag you down there and tie you down and make you get rid of this baby. And and when you're in not a great relationship, and the insecurity of lose that person as well, the last thing I wanted to do was to have him discard me, which he did instantly anyway, of course. No one talks about it. The public have, unfortunately for them, got really no idea. All they see is pro-life or pro-choice, and it's a woman's body and all the rest of it. And I think the argument is so much deeper than that. It's not just about pro-choice and pro-life. It's about options and sharing the truth with women and sharing the truth with the public, so they can have their own educated opinion about it, not just listening to some woman say it's my body and it's my right. And it's so much deeper than that, because it affects everybody. People need to be educated as to how it affects everyone, how it's affected my mother and our relationship. The guilt that she goes through now, like, did I support you enough? Should I have stopped you? What should I have said? What should I have done differently? Because she sees the trauma that it's had in my life and how it's affected me, how it's affected my marriage. I'm so blessed and fortunate enough to have been given children. I've got 2 beautiful girls and I'm having another baby, but how it affects my parenting. So it's not just that moment, that girl that first walked in, it's completely affected my life, how it affects other women that I've seen that have been pregnant, how I've treated them over the years, because I can't deal with their pregnancy because that brings up stuff for me. So it affects so many things, ex-boyfriends that I've had, and it's not just that woman, and how it affects everyone. I know a young lady, or she's 30s now, who had an abortion, who's never been able to have children since. You don't hear about that, do you? You just hear about it solved the problem at the time and woof, it's all dealt with, and no one has to acknowledge that anymore. But now she's had years of suffering and grief of being married, and not only is she suffering the loss of that child, which has greatly affected her, I know. She said, I still cry every day silently at home. No one mentioned the possibility of adoption. Adoption, like who it's just something that's nothing's ever spoken about. No one ever talks about that option, and that's probably one of the toughest parts for me to deal with, because I'm like, oh, why didn't someone just tell me? Why, and that regret that you hold on to, that there's just nothing that you can do about it. I've got relatives that have been on the waiting list for adoption for years. They've been married 10 years now and they still haven't been able to have a child. People are desperately wanting children that are unable to have children, and it's like, So there's that frustration of, oh my goodness, why can't we help these people? Like, help this young woman or older woman or whatever situation she's in. Let's support her through the pregnancy. If she's not equipped to raise a child, great, awesome, your courage is incredible. Let's support her, and then bless this other family who are in a position to be able to. And then, I've heard that there's some amazing adoption rules in America where they just work together. They're all supportive of one another, and the married couple can support the pregnant. I'm saying the word girl loosely, just the young woman through her pregnancy, and they can visit with her and go to ultrasound visits with her, support her. She's totally supported. There's no condemnation or blame or shame and how irresponsible are you. It's like, let's do this together. And then she willingly and happily and lovingly passes this beautiful baby over to a family who are desperate to have children. They would do anything to have children. There is a journey of healing. It can be probably not as quick or as slow as you want it to, but it's certainly there. And just allow yourself to grieve. Allow yourself to acknowledge that what you're going through is grief. Certainly post-traumatic pain is something that's very real, and I think to acknowledge that is probably the first part of healing, to understand why your behaviour is what it is. Whether, for me, it was a lot of alcohol and a lot of drugs, and I was so anti-drugs, it was unbelievable, but I found myself in that place, and I just got to a point where it was, I actually cannot do this anymore. I'm just suffering so greatly that I started to look inwards. One point of healing for me came about when I contacted an organisation called Priceless Life. I just looked them up on the internet and I found them, and I went for some counselling. It was quite confronting at the time because it was the first time I'd ever really spoken to someone about what was going on for me, and that was when I really discovered, wow, there's a lot there that I didn't realise I was dealing with. I was busy blaming everyone else, but once I started to let that grief out, the healing began, and it's been an incredible journey, many different ways, and it's helped me with parenting, it's helped me with my marriage, and just to love myself. I've hated myself as long as I remember, deeply. I still struggle with it a bit, and it's amazing what appearances you put on the outside. Get off in the morning and dust yourself off and make out like everything's great, but deep down you're going through this turmoil. And it's been allowing myself to grieve and accepting and not blaming myself anymore, not blaming other people. And I'm still going through a process of not being angry at people for not supporting me. I have to just think they did the best that they could do in their situation, but it's part of the healing process, because if I stay in that place of blaming them, I'll be stuck in just that miry clay of pain, and I think it's just letting go of all of it, and that can take some time. So I think it's imperative that you speak to someone that specialises in post-abortion grief, and because they're unbiased, they're not there to judge you or condemn you for what you've done, but just they can understand through their expertise how to help you through that process of healing, and to hold your hand through it. And I know there was one lady in particular I was seeing at Priceless Life, who was just incredible with that. She helped me so much, and I got incredible healing through her and her compassion and her love for me. And imperative. I would advise against going to see just anyone generally, because they're not specialised in that area, and they may not understand how to help you through that process. And it is a process, and a lot of people don't understand the whole chain of events that can go along with post-abortion, and how it affects you. They might just understand you're struggling with the grief of a baby. Okay, well, that's just one component of it. They don't understand the shame, the self-hatred, the loathing, the other behaviour that comes, the suicidal tendencies, because you can't face waking up in the morning because there's just this turmoil that you're going on, and this, the voices of what have you done, you're horrible, and everything else, the broken relationships, and they may not understand all of that. What would I say to women at the moment facing an unplanned pregnancy? My heart is breaking for you right now. And I would say that you're not alone. And if you feel alone, find someone who's there to support you through it. I don't mean support you as in hold your hand and drive you to the clinic. I'm talking about supporting you through your emotions. You're pregnant, your hormones are raging at the moment. And people talk about that in a really negative way, like, oh, her hormones are raging. Yeah, they are. You're absolutely right. And she needs support through that. And I would say contact someone other than an abortion clinic who are only going to give you one option. I would say absolutely speak to someone that's probably not family or friend, that's completely unbiased, and probably someone from like Priceless Lifehouse who are there to talk about all of your options. I would say that there are people out there who will love you and support you, and wait until you've spoken to that person before you make a decision, because once you go through with that abortion, and it may seem like it's the right thing at the time, and I totally understand that. I've been there many times, but once you go down that path, it is irreversible, and there's not many things in life that are irreversible. You know, many things we can turn around and try and make good of a bad situation. You know, there's many things that we can do that. A broken relationship, you might think it's the end of the world, and we've all had them, but not trying to sound too airy-fairy, but good can come of it. You know, you can look back and think, wow, okay, well, I've learnt from that situation, but once you go through with an abortion, it is irreversible. There's nothing that you can ever do about it. So make sure you speak to someone who can give you your options, who might be able to, for example, if the biggest opposition that you're facing is, I'm at high school, great, speak to someone who might be able to help you with tutoring or a way that you can get through school as a solution to that, or if it's a job situation or a relationship, if there's one particular thing that seems to be the root reason that you're wanting to have an abortion, first of all, I would recommend finding out a solution to that particular problem and then see what's presented to you, because it's finite, and